Moi drodzy, nigdy się w sumie nie interesowałem Elden Ringiem pod jednym konkretnym kątem, mianowicie cut content. Content wycięty przed premierą, content, który miał trafić do gry, ale ostatecznie nie trafił z różnych powodów. Może dlatego, że Miyazaki jakoś nie widział tego w wizji lorowej, może nie mieli czasu czegoś wprowadzić. To jest coś, o czym chciałbym się trochę więcej dowiedzieć, bo wiem o niektórych rzeczach, ale nie aż tyle, ile chyba ten materiał nam przedstawi, bo to trwa 26 minut, także może być ciekawie.
What if I told you there's a completely different version of Elden Ring you never got to see? If
Dawaj.
I told you that, I would be lying. Because there's actually 3 different versions. From broken weapons to impossible questlines and even entirely new endings. Elden Ring has so much cut content that it could almost make up an entirely different game. Today I'm gonna uncover every single piece of cut content.
Jakoś mnie to specjalnie nie dziwi, że Elden Ring ma najwięcej tego cut contentu, bo jest też największą grą, więc pewnie tam był taki przemiał pomysłów ze strony deweloperów, taka burza mózgów się pewnie przy każdej jednej rzeczy działa, że ja pierdzielę. No a wiadomo, wszystkiego się nie da zrobić, wszystkiego się nie da zawrzeć, wszystko też nie będzie ze sobą spójne, więc tego cut contentu jest sporo. Jestem ciekawy, jak do takich rzeczy ludzie w ogóle dochodzą. Skąd oni to biorą? Czy w plikach gry gdzieś to dalej siedzi, tylko po prostu jest niewykorzystane, czy jak?
Explain it, figure out why it was cut, and what the game would look like if it wasn't removed. But wait a minute, what could I possibly mean by there being 3 buried versions of Elden Ring? Well, aside from the base game, there's a 1.0 version, the network test, and the Age of the Unforged. These 3 versions will be the layers of cut content that we delve into.
Okay.
The Age of the Unforged is the development version of Elden Ring that no player ever got to see.
Wersja
The only way we can
deweloperska.
understand cut content from here is picking clues from the code and trying to piece together a vision of what was. And what we usually put together paints a completely different picture from the game we have today.
Zobaczcie nawet na ten user interface Zeldena, jak on się zmienił. Jak nie miał takiej tożsamości designowej, nie? Taki bardzo prosty, bardzo sterylny, niepasujący do Elden Ringa. Te paski zdrowia, kolorystyka tego wszystkiego, ten cały wybór itemów, teraz wygląda to dużo lepiej. Drobne zmiany, ale to jest tylko wierzchołek góry lodowej, jeżeli chodzi o zmiany, które zostały poczynione od tam właśnie wersji deweloperskich i 1.0 aż do teraz.
This is our deepest layer of cut content. Then there's a 1.0 version, our highest layer of cut content. This is a version that shipped on disk, but most players never got to experience it because of the day 1 patch that rolled out and changed the 1.0 version to the one we have today. 1.0 was largely similar to the Elden Ring we know and love, but there were a few changes that had super interesting gameplay and lore applications. We can get access to this version by installing Elden Ring on disk without internet, or by installing this really well done mod. And the middle layer of cut content is the network test, the pre-launch version that only approved players got their hands on. This version holds a lot of insanely impactful cut content, the kind of stuff that would change the gameplay and lore in massive ways.
A propos loru, to jest bardzo ciekawe, bo ja słyszałem z cut contentem coś takiego, że Miyazaki potem, jak już jest blisko premiery, często celowo jakieś rzeczy wycina, bo uważa, że za bardzo jest wyjaśnione. Że nie, dobra, oni się za szybko domyślą tego, o co mi chodziło. Trzeba to wypieprzyć.
To the point it's unrecognizable from the current game. And one of the biggest network test cut content was the starter classes. In the network test, there was an Enchanted Knight and a Bloody Wolf class.
Co ty
The
gadasz?
Enchanted Knight started with the Winged Spear, which is just called the Spear in the current game, and the Vanguard class starts with it now. There was also the Carrion Glintstone Shield, now called the Carrion Knight Shield in the current game, and it used to have the Sorcerer Hunter Ash of War, and now has Carrion Retaliation. It also has the Glintstone Staff, a staff that boosts Carrion sword sorceries, which is super strong, because you also start with the Carrion Piercer, a solid sword sorcery that complements
Nie, no
the staff.
klasa zdecydowanie mocniejsza od innych. Znaczy dalej mamy samuraja, który jest ewidentnie mocniejszy od innych klas, ale no tutaj to już ostro polecieli.
And Glintstone Pebble, which is the weakest ranged option, but it's better than nothing. And you were wearing an entire Carrion Knight armor set. It's so sad that they cut this class. This would have given players an option to start right away with a melee magic build. I have no doubt this could have been one of the most popular classes if it wasn't cut. On the other hand, the Bloody Wolf had the Bloody Wolf armor set. Who would have guessed?
No ten
And the
armory
Bastard
fajny.
Sword, which would have been the first time in Soulsborne history you could start with a greatsword. Then the Iron Round Shield, which just sucks. It didn't even have full damage negation, but you probably would have two-handed the Bastard Sword anyways. This is a class I think can stay cut. The Bastard Sword was insanely impressive to start with, and strength users would be given a class they could go with so they can start their build right off the bat. But the
Ale faktycznie brakuje takiej klasy, która startuje z Greatswordem. Ja słyszałem, że na tej wersji nowej, która ma wyjść na Nintendo Switcha, ma być klasa, która zaczyna z Milady. I to będzie porąbane, jeżeli faktycznie broń z DLC-ka, która ma naprawdę mocarny moveset i do której niektóre bossy z podstawki są nieprzyzwyczajone i są orane przez tę broń, będzie faktycznie czymś startowym.
Shield just wasn't it, and the Vagabond is clearly better. I can see why they removed these classes. Even though the Enchanted Knight would have been awesome, it seems like these classes were more about setting you on a specific build for your game, when FromSoft has always taken the approach of classes being more of a light suggestion. If these would have stayed in the game, it would have changed the early game completely. You would start out with a solid build, so you would explore and experiment less. Tight classes like these would mess with the very DNA of the game, but let's just be happy we didn't.
No prawda, klasa powinna być jakimś zarysem postaci, jakimś małym archetypem, jeżeli chodzi o statystyki, dać ci drobne możliwości walki, ale Elden Ring jest grą, w której chodzi o eksplorację, w której chodzi o to, żebyś zaglądał pod różne kamienie, do różnych skrzynek, do różnych katakumb, żebyś podnosił dużo tych itemów. Takie jest zamierzenie From Software. Więc dając ci klasę, która jest mocna już od startu, oczywiście pomijamy tutaj samuraja, no bo on dalej jest mocny, zdecydowanie za mocny nawet, bo po prostu bleed jest OP, ale faktycznie dawanie takich klas, tak uzbrojonych, mogłoby trochę zepsuć ten experience. Ludzie mogliby się zamknąć w tej klasie i iść na Margita, iść na Godrika, pół gry, kurde, przejść tym, a nie szukając nic, nie korzystając z tego otwartego świata, który jednak jest największą siłą Elden Ringa, nie?
Lose any of the armor sets from these classes, because I can't say the same about the Ragged set. The Ragged set is this crazy cool sort of makeshift cloak that looks super sick and nomadic. You can even throw a cape on it. In the original 1.0 version of the game, which you can still technically play, you would progress the game till you kill Godric. And
Musimy kiedyś zagrać wersję 1.0. Ja myślałem, że to jest niemożliwe, ale ponoć faktycznie jest mod, tak jak on tutaj powiedział, który wprowadza te wszystkie zmiany, które były w 1.0. Wydaje mi się, że to był fajny content, zobaczyć jak ta gra się zmieniła przed Day One patchem. Dla tych, którzy nie wiedzą, Day One patch to jest patch, który na początku od razu po premierze jest wprowadzany, on fiksuje najwięcej błędów. To jest taki ostateczny patch zaraz po premierze, który właśnie ludziom ma tę grę uaktualnić od wersji deweloperskiej do tej i niektórzy są w stanie tego patcha po prostu nie mieć, jeżeli nie mają dostępu do internetu, bo ten patch często jest robiony po tym, jak już fizyczne wersje gry zostały wydane, w związku z czym jeżeli masz na przykład na konsoli płytkę i sobie z płytki Elden Ringa instalujesz, no to jest wersja 1.0, nie? Która jest potem automatycznie aktualizowana, ale jak nie masz dostępu do neta, to już niekoniecznie. Dajcie znać widzowie z YouTube'a w komentarzach, czy powinienem ograć Eldena 1.0.
you can buy it from Gostock. Technically, it was added later into Shadow of the Erdtree's Egon's set, but Egon's set will always be a fraud, for as long as the Ragged set lives in our hearts. But who's the guy wearing the Ragged set? That's Reeling Rico. Or just Rico.
Co?
Or Monk Jico. Why the hell does this guy have 3 names? He's the one you were supposed to get the ragged armor from, and an entirely cut NPC. And not only that, he was also connected to what could be one of the biggest quest lines in the game. There isn't a whole lot we know about Rico, but I think this voice line of him sums it up pretty good. As you surely know, my compeer, I am but a humble man of cloth, and I must profess. The study of alcohol is but another form of worship. Oh, sing.
Ciekawe jak się czują designerzy, którzy tworzą te wszystkie rzeczy, a Miyazaki na koniec mówi nie, tego NPC-a i wszystkie jego dialogi wypieprzamy.
Trina, my faith is in alcohol and the hearts of men. Yeah, Rico, we get it. You like drinking and driving. Me too. This guy's questline starts with him telling you about Dream Brew, an alcohol previously only reserved for the demigods. But he knows how to make it, and he offers to share it with you if you get the ingredients. Once you agree, he gives you the Saint Trina crystal ball item. You're gonna have to use it to interact with sleeping animals around the map. You can tell they're sleeping by the fact that they have this little fog over their faces. You only need to find 2 sleeping animals to have enough. And once you return back to him, he gives you your much anticipated nectar. You can give Dream Brew to NPCs for them to give you their deepest and darkest secrets. Yeah, I think I see why this was cut from the game. You were essentially getting people drunk to get more information out of them. There are some ethical concerns there.
Dobra, to na pewno nie jest z powodów etycznych wycięte, po prostu Miyazaki nie chciał dać za dużo informacji graczom, jestem przekonany. No bo umówmy się, Elden Ring, Dark Soulsy, wszystkie gry Fromu, one ogólnie są niemoralne i nieetyczne w aspektach lorowych. Także to na pewno nie był problem i nie była rzecz, którą Miyazaki rozważał. O nie, nie możemy kogoś upić, żeby się od niego więcej dowiedzieć, tylko nie to.
Added on, if this was still in the game, it would only really serve a story purpose, which isn't the main reason people play Elden Ring. And the people that do care would probably just watch the hidden dialogues on YouTube and never do the quest. On the other hand, something that's always going to be worth doing is subscribing to Through the Fog. Subscribing nets you consistent, amazing Soulsborne content. Also consider leaving a like if you're enjoying this video. You can also drop a super thanks if you want to make make sure we see your message. Any amount is appreciated. Now back on topic. When you pick up the Drake armor, there's a gigantic difference in the description of it between the current game and the 1.0 version. The 1.0 version said it was the armor worn by the dragon tracker, Andre. And as you can see, current description has nothing to say about our dragon tracker. We literally have no info on this guy, which pisses me off so much, because you're telling me we could have had the John Wick of dragons in this game, and they just scrapped it? We could have
Kurde, dziwne, nie? Czemu Miyazaki podejmuje takie decyzje? Mógł stworzyć legendę jakiegoś faktycznie łowcy smoków, a stwierdził, nie. Dobra, smoki nie były zabijane przez żadnego gościa. Była tylko wojna i tyle.
had two curse you Bale level speeches. But
A właśnie, z drugiej strony jest Egon w DLC. Może on to wyciął, bo stwierdził, że chce ten wątek rozbudować później. To jest potencjalny pomysł, no.
it doesn't take a rocket scientist to guess what role this guy would have had in the game if he wasn't removed. Given the fact that Placidusax is insanely hidden, I can take a damn good guess that Andre's questline would have been about tracking and killing all the open world dragons, and eventually ending in the climax of finding the Dragon Lord himself and taking down Placidusax with Andre. It actually sounds so sick, it makes me wish it was in the game so bad.
Kurde, quest z polowaniem na smoki byłby fajny, bo wydaje mi się, że smoki po prostu tak wolno stojące, zwłaszcza gdy widzisz ich już kilka z rzędu, nie są tak zachęcające. Ludzie mają trochę ich dość, z tego co wiem. Ja tam nie jestem jakimś wielkim przeciwnikiem smoków w Eldenie, są okej. Natomiast gdybyśmy mieli taki questline w podstawce, to na pewno byłaby większa motywacja do zrobienia tego.
But something that we have zero info on and I can't really speculate on from the unforged version is the entwining umbilical cord. But good thing this wiki has what it does. But what the hell does change the demeanor of wearer's actions even mean? This might have some effect when talking to the NPCs? Maybe if you aggroed them, you can make them friendly with this? But it's a talisman, so that doesn't make sense. It really seems like an item like that would be more of a consumable. But one thing I noticed is that it kind of looks like the Treyarch logo. So maybe we're getting a Ranny skin in Call of Duty. I don't even know anymore. I can guess this was removed because the unforged version probably had more ambitious plans for NPC interactions. If it wasn't cut, there may have been some sort of karma system that would determine your demeanor when talking to people. Or maybe there
A
was some...
ciekawe, czy Miyazaki by był chętny kiedyś zrobić taki honor level jak w Red Deadzie, tylko jakoś ciekawy i przemyślany. Bardzo mnie to interesuje. Z drugiej strony poziom honoru to jest system, który potrafi ludzi za bardzo przykuć do siebie i ludzie za bardzo dyktują swoje czyny konkretnym poziomem, który jest widoczny, zamiast po prostu faktycznie podejmować wybory, nie wiedząc, jaki to będzie miało wpływ, nie?
affinity
Nie
system
patrząc na
being
ich
worked on.
moralność.
I'm not quite sure. If you have any ideas on what it could be, drop it in the comments. But forget about that, because they designed a thong for Fia in Unforged.
Oho.
Yeah, in the game files, data miners found a piece of armor called the Deathbed Smalls.
Oho.
I can't believe FromSoft would take this from us. We need the Fia Hot Coffee questline in Elden Ring 2 now. But yeah, you can get this with mods and put it on, because I know you people are into that. FromSoft also cut the Ragged Lion Cloth, which is just a lion cloth, but ragged as you can tell from the name. I don't really get why this was even created. If a male tarnished wanted to be skin inclusive, they could have just worn Fia's thong. And now, let's cover a piece of cut content that's not so lighthearted from the Unforged version. The Burial Crow letter was a piece of cut content meant to flesh out Kalé and his caravan buddies. This quest does so much for the characterization and lore of this game. I think it's such a shame that it didn't make it to the full game. If I had to guess why it was cut, I would say it's because this quest doesn't really follow the usual FromSoft design philosophy. FromSoft likes making their lore a pretty cryptic puzzle. This quest is so upfront with the story that it had to tell, that FromSoft probably thought it was too straightforward a way of figuring out this.
Kurde, ja uważam, że Elden Ring by zyskał nawet na tym, gdyby były questy właśnie tajemnicze w stylu Fromu, a jednak część questów taka, które trochę nas po prostu prowadzą za rączkę i są aktywnością gameplayową. Bo Elden Ring jest na tyle duży i w aspekcie otwartego świata odszedł kompletnie od formuły dotychczasowo nam znanej, że questy też by mogły mieć w zasadzie swoje dwa światy, nie? Masz tą taką główną, mroczną linię fabularną, która jest kryptyczna, puzzlowa, tajemnicza, ale jednocześnie masz takie totalnie luźne rzeczy, typu podążaj śladem smoków, podążaj śladem caravan i faktycznie zachęcałoby to do szukania ich na tej mapie, zwiedzania tej mapy, a przy okazji odkrywania nowych lokacji, ruin itp. itd.
Lore. This is a rare Miyazaki L, because this questline is awesome. When talking to Kalé at the church, you can tell he's very caring of his nomadic merchant friends, and even tells you story of the Great Caravan, a place where all these merchants merchants live.
Oh,
He apparently
kurde.
lost it and has been searching for it. Then after beating Godric, he tells you about his intent to leave and continue searching for the caravan. Soon after that, in the place of Kalé, you find
Ale
him
widać, że to jest wycięte i to ma sens, bo Kalé jest dość wyjątkowym merchantem jednak i wydaje się, jakby on miał coś więcej do powiedzenia, wydaje się, jakby faktycznie ta postać miała być głębsza, a jednak nie jest, kurczę.
message from him, telling you he's headed to Liurnia, and he hopes to
A
see
mogłaby
you
być.
again. Keep progressing through the game as normal, and you'll find Kalé once again near the scenic Isle Grace. He's clearly pretty happy and surprised to see you, and asks if you've
Ty, tutaj wylądował Patches chyba ze swoim questem ostatecznie, nie? A co ciekawe.
seen a burial crow nearby, with a letter attached to its claw. After exploring for a bit, you can find the crow sitting in front of this cliff face, and you get the burial crow's letter from him. It was actually pointed out by Sekiro Dubby, the community member that restored this content, that these birds carrying letters to the merchant explains why the buyable notes have colored feathers attached to them. These little answers we
No.
find from data mining is so cool. Once you sell the letter to Kalé, you can ask him about it, and he tells you that the letter is from his people, and it might be the breakthrough he needed to find the caravan. Then leaves you another goodbye message in the spot he was, saying he's heading to Lanedale. You find him again at Lanedale in front of this crashed carriage, and he tells you about how the letter is leading him to the underground part of Lanedale. And then there's actually a second burial crow letter you get. It doesn't seem like there was a coded way to actually obtain it, but you can give it to him, and he learns from it that the way under Lanedale is through the well. He speaks about how excited he is to
Jezu,
find
jaki to ma sens. Przecież kurde, tyle ludzi nie ma pojęcia o istnieniu kanałów, bo to się wchodzi do tego losową kurna studnią w miasteczku. Bardzo mało ludzi to odkrywa tak o samych z siebie, a ten quest cię do tego prowadził. Była jakaś możliwość podążania za questlinem i to już którymś etapem tego questa, który wskazywał ci to miejsce. I wiele questów w ogóle w Eldenie tak robi. Nawet Vulcano Manor jest troszeczkę takie questowe, nie? I kurde, to by miało tak dużo sensu. Dziwne, że to wycięli.
his way back to the caravan, and speaks of the wonders there will be to trade, a bout of enthusiasm that won't last long. He leaves you another message, and you follow him to the subterranean shunning grounds. On the way, you see countless bodies of his fellow caravan members, and then you find him.
Did you see what they did to my ancestors?
O Jezu.
The whole clan buried alive, sick, maddened, husks of themselves. You heard their moans. They're hardly human anymore. They think we worship the three fingers, that we called the maddening sickness down upon them. Well, if that's what they expect from us, then that's what they shall get from us! The world of grace and his people should have been content to see
Kurde,
us
ciekawe
slip between
questline
the
to by mógł
cracks,
być emocjonalny.
to have intruded upon our solace, having broken us upon their whims. Never forgive any of you. I should apologize to you. It's my fault that we stumbled into this mess. I'm sorry.
Even though he was so angry at the fate of his people, he still apologized to you. Kalé was someone who lived his life with humility till the end, and the fact that this is cut content is a crime. If you get burned by the frenzied flame, he will follow suit and wish the world to burn, but he isn't a good host for the flames. So the only thing that gets destroyed is himself. If this
Ja
stayed in the game, I imagine
pierdzielę.
everyone would be going frenzied flame every playthrough, and Kalé would be everyone's favorite character. I know
Nie,
after
no przecież ten questline jest dojebany. Stary, to by mógł być obok Aleksandra najlepszy questline.
getting through this, he's mine. But on the other hand, let's just be happy that Kalé doesn't ever have to suffer like this in the real game, even if we don't get to understand him to the same extent. Alright, let's bring the mood up a little by talking about our next piece of gut content. Time to touch on the red insignia and Irina's necklace from 1.0. Irina's necklace is functionally the same thing as Irina's letter. You get it from Irina and you give it to Edgar and then you kill the
Okay.
misbegotten and you find Edgar over a dead Irina just like the base
Naszyjnik
game.
fajniejszy w sumie niż list.
If this stayed in the game, nothing would have changed at all. This quest might have played a little different from what we know today, but it really just seems like Irina's necklace is a reskin of Irina's letter. And the name Irina's necklace is something that the community just came up with, because the actual name of this necklace was taken out of the files. It also looks a lot like Raya's necklace.
Ale ogólnie A, no w sumie Raya też ma ten necklace. To pewnie dlatego to wycięli, żeby nie były zbyt podobne. Ale sam naszyjnik ma więcej sensu, bo daje lepszy dowód, że to faktycznie od niej, a nie, że list został napisany przez kogokolwiek, nie?
Speaking of Raya, if you help her get her necklace and get the Volcano Manor invitation, you have the replacement for our next cut item. The way you used to get into the Volcano Manor was the red insignia, which would have been given to you by Tanit, the manor proprietress instead of Raya. The red insignia is actually a symbol of being a recusant. So in the original version of the game, you had to join their faction to get into the Volcano Manor. Looking at the design of this, you can actually see Rico going around a tree, and the frame is made of two snakes doing a little kiss. But this item wasn't entirely replaced. Because if you take a look at the drawing room key, you can see that it uses the same design as the red insignia. There was probably a more ambitious vision behind the Volcano Manor that we never got to see. If this stayed in the game, maybe the red insignia...
Elden Ring jest przykładem gry, która jest tak duża, że niestety gdyby faktycznie miała być taka, jak twórcy chcieli, gdyby miała być idealna, różnorodna, nie miałoby być powtórek mobów, to by produkcja tej gry trwała pewnie 15 lat. I dlatego dużo rzeczy z niej pewnie wycięli, dlatego dużo rzeczy tam się powtarza, dlatego bossów tyle jest takich samych. Szkoda, kurde. Chciałbym kiedyś zobaczyć taką ostateczną grę Miyazakiego, nie? Która jest tak duża jak Elden Ring, ale pod każdym względem idealna i wypełniona.
Insignia would have been one of the Covenant items, and Covenants would have returned from Dark Souls 3. But Irina's necklace and the red insignia didn't change the gameplay flow at all. I can't say the same for our next piece of cut content, because in Elden Ring's 1.0 version, item farming really wasn't necessary. Merchants sold infinite of everything you needed. Patches sold infinite gold pickled foul foots. So you can have
Nie, no dobra, nielimitowane przedmioty do kupowania były po prostu głupie. To dobrze, że zmienili akurat. Musisz czuć, że jesteś w jakiś sposób ograniczony w Souls-like'u.
Rune buff in every scenario you want, considering the fact they're so easy to get. And the Mistwood merchant also sold unlimited arrows. I can understand why they removed these. They absolutely destroyed the item economy. If you could still buy unlimited gold foul foots, why would you not just pop one before beating every single boss? It would make early game leveling absurdly fast and probably ruin the balance of the game.
To. Dobrze, że te
and it's
łapki są
also
zawsze...
super important for the game that you have to farm for unique arrows. I think they could offer unlimited of these in the late game, but getting them early to mid game is just insane. But what's
Jeśli chodzi o strzały i ogólnie łucznika, to uważam, że powinni od tej pory zawsze archetyp nightrainowy łucznika wdrażać do gry. Serio, tak powinno wyglądać łucznictwo. Aktywne, agresywne, mobilne, szybkie. Nie takie, jak mamy do tej pory we wszystkich singlowych grach Fromu.
Even more insane is the fact that one of the coolest quests in Elden Ring is unforged cut content. And that's Asimi's quest
I wtedy faktycznie, wiesz, łucznik jest realną opcją do grania i ciekawą opcją do grania dla ludzi, a nie swego rodzaju challenge'em, bo z reguły to uchodzi za challenge.
This could have brought numerous different features to the game, and ways to become stronger in the lands between. This quest is mostly finished, so I legitimately have no idea why it was cut, and I think this needs to be added back. Because it's amazing. This quest revolves around a silver tear that has learned about and fears death. A creature that reached a level of consciousness no one intended for it. I'll let her speak for herself.
Please wait. Proud, tarnished warrior.
Co jest?
Before you kill me, let me speak. I can aid you. Please, just hear me out. Thank you for listening. I am Asimi. My true form is that of a silver tear. I am a simple being who can assume the shapes of other living things. But now, I've gained
Tłumaczyłaby trochę to,
knowledge.
jak mimiki działają.
I speak and ponder and live in fear of death.
Czyli widzisz, trochę takie jak AI, nie? Wykształciła siebie, będąc jednocześnie tym, który zawsze kopiuje.
Mighty, tarnished warrior, I beg of you, let me keep the life I've been granted. In exchange, I offer you power. Now, set your lips upon me and breathe in deep. I will live inside of you
O,
and grant you strength untold.
She begs you not to kill her and makes an offer. After the encounter, you get the item Asimi, Silver tier. It's
Co
stated
jest?
that Asimi has infected the Tarnished, and that this infection grants us power, since we're the host of Asimi. She'll hang inside of you, not really doing much until you reach an eternal city, and then she begs you to explore it, so she can discover the ancient wonders of the stars, whatever that means.
Ej, to jest
Once you
ciekawe, że cię opętuje mimik w jakiś sposób i masz z nim relację podczas zwiedzania miasta z tym związane. Ej, zarąbiste, Venom. Fajne nawet. Kurde, ile wyciętego kontentu z Eldena, ja nie miałem pojęcia o tym. Jasne, te wszystkie questy pewnie wymagałyby pewnego doszlifowania i dlatego zostały wycięte między innymi, ale one mega fajnie dają ci rozwinięcie wielu innych miejsc i zakątków Eldena, które są po prostu istniejące i tajemnicze. Zajebiście by było je zobaczyć.
so you can
Silver
drink
handzik
out of it.
normalnie,
She
no.
says this will allow her to grant us further strength. We then have to find both chalices, one in each eternal city. Once you drink from these chalices,
Oh.
it evolves her from her previous form to an exact clone of you. And before she leaves, she tells you that she will live the same way that you would have, which doesn't really make me feel any better about a clone of me walking around, but okay. You find her later in the game, and she says if you didn't find her, you both could have become Elden Lord. But since you did find her, she has to kill you and become Elden Lord herself. I don't really understand that logic.
No ale to ma znacznie więcej sensu niż losowe spotkanie Mimika w takiej arenie, w której aż dziwne, że on się znajduje. Ja uważam, że ten questline jest dużo lepszy i po prostu w miejscu, gdzie jest boss Mimik, powinno się znaleźć coś innego i by było zajebiście. Walczysz ze samym sobą, kimś, kto wydawał się przyjacielem, ale ostatecznie staje się tobą i chce cię zastąpić, nie?
But you end up fighting her anyways. And once you kill her, she feels fear of the unknown for the first time.
Dying. So this is fear. I'm glad, my Lord Host.
No i faktycznie nagroda w postaci Samona Mimika tutaj byłaby dużo fajniejsza niż losowa skrzynia.
Anta, the guy that put this together, thinks that if this was still in the game, it would be how you got mimicked here instead of the mimic boss fight. And he's probably
No.
right. This would have been a way more cool and satisfying way of getting it. You can't just cheese her so easily, because she clones before you even know that you're gonna fight her. And this deep storyline about her becoming the most human in death is so interesting and rewarding. This quest brings up the question, what is identity? And more importantly, is it fear that makes us human? And a quest as huge as that isn't even the biggest thing that was cut, because they removed an entire ending from the Unforged version. Yeah,
Co?
in the DLC there's a completely different ending you can get, where you side with Miquella and Radon, called the Age of Compassion.
Co?
If this was kept in the game, you would assist Miquella rise to godhood, and create a world where all beings thrived. It would change the lore of the game completely, and you may have been able to actually save the lands between.
Aha.
Walking into the Promised Consort fight, you would have the option to skip the fight altogether and side with Miquella and Radon. This explains a lot, because loads of people really had problems with the Shadow of the Erdtree ending. It seemed abrupt and rushed.
No, ja uważam, że totalnie zraszowali. I mnie dziwiło, że nie było w ogóle wyboru endingu. Że, nie wiem, na przykład to przytulenie nawet podczas fightu się z Mikelą nie spowodowało na przykład jakiegoś endingu, nie? Mega dziwne to było, że my nagle po prostu stwierdzamy, dobra, podążaliśmy cały czas jego śladem, to zaraz go zabijmy, nie?
And this gives us the insight that it was. If they didn't throw this out, we would have an actually solid ending to the DLC. The community would probably be happy. Good thing fellow Tarnished were able to restore it. Go ahead and give it a listen.
Lord of the Old Order, let us go together.
Starego porządku, też ciekawe, kurde, w nawiązaniu do podstawki.
I hereby swear.
I teraz ma sens, czemu tam teraz nie da się wejść, ale można było potencjalnie w endingu, kurwa.
To every living being and every living soul, now comes the age of our Eden, a 1,000-year voyage, guided by compassion, beginning here.
Czy Miyazaki po prostu pomyślał, że dokopmy ludziom i każmy się im z nimi bić, bo trudny fight wymyśleliśmy i nie chcemy dać im możliwości go skipnąć? Nie wiem, ja na przykład uważam, że mimo, że walka z Ledą jest beznadziejna, to też mogła zostać ograna dużo lepiej, że te NPC mogły mieć formę bossów, że dało się to że to też było na szybko robione chyba. To, co się dzieje zaraz przed fightem z Radanem.
No living thing will be denied. No deed censured. I am ready to embrace the whole of it. Let us go together. Redan, my promised consort.
They probably just cut this due to time restraint. You can pretty
Ja
clearly see this is
pierdzielę, i to jest kolejny moment, w którym DLC do Eldena też przez swoją skalę pewnie zostało pozbawionego fajnego kontentu, no bo wiadomo, trwałoby to za długo.
fully coded. And actually, most of Shadow of the Erdtree was just reusing cut content. For example, the Twin Blade of Abundance and Decay was cut from Unforged and later added into the DLC as the Euphoria.
Euporia.
Thank God we didn't lose the badass light spear. This thing tears through bosses and is one of the best weapons in the game. If this stayed cut, we would have lost easily one of the most aura-filled Ash of Wars. And there were a lot of other pieces of cut content that were just strange decisions to cut. When you're just about to get to Astel and the Grand Closeteer, there's a completely removed version of the Ancestral Follower. This version is covered in Scarlet Rot, and deals a lot of it whenever it attacks you. I really have to ask why this is cut. It's fully coded and functional, and the application of it in the 1.0 version is just fine. But that's not all, because in a flash of brilliance, From Software created a genius new set of armor, the Millicent's Robe, which is literally just a traveler's set with some blood on it. I don't know if they were trying to pull a Dead by Daylight, or they made Millicent's Robe first, but there was just no reason to cut this. They also cut Iji's confession for absolutely no reason. In the 1.0 version, after Iji died, they left a confession on their corpse. This letter reveals Iji's guilt about sealing Blythe away, and strangely enough, reveals that Iji is a girl. Yeah, if this was kept in,
so-
Iji would be a woman. I don't know how that would work with his current voice actor, but it's 2025, so who even cares? But things like this were awesome ways to add more lore to the game, and got nuked for seemingly no reason. But that's not the case for all cut content. Like the 1.0 version of Millennia, that had a second waterfowl dance where
No ta,
she's
był inny
walking
atak, no.
forward. If that stayed in, even Let Me Solo Her's career would have been ended by her. That can stay cut. Keep that out of my game. And our next piece of cut content could have been the best questline in any Soulsborne game. Nearby the seaside ruins, you can find an NPC called Gilbert, in a place where Yura usually is. He asks you about the Crucible Knight Ordovis, saying there's a grudge against him. Going to the Bloodhound Everjail, you'll find the place that originally held the Crucible Knight Ordovis fight, but it's replaced with the Bloodhound Knight in modern Elden Ring. Upon approaching the Everjail, you were able to summon Gilbert, and when defeating Ordovis, you can go back to Gilbert, and he speaks about your fight together as if it was a dream. We find out here that he's serving the God of Vengeance, and these grudges held against others are the will of the God of Vengeance. Whenever anyone does
Nowe
something
bóstwo.
wrong, if their victim prays to the God of Vengeance, Gilbert is who's sent to exact that revenge. If you go around killing merchants, Gilbert will eventually invade and hunt you down to get retribution for the fallen innocents. Yep, Elden Ring had its very own police system, which I really think we need back, because all of us go
Kurde, fajne to było, bo trochę dawało vibe Pursuera.
around killing the merchants for their ball bearings. It's a huge issue. Back to Gilbert's quest. He states his next target is Godric. Godric has taken so many people's arms to graft to himself that he caught the attention of the Redeemers. If you go to Stormvale and get to the
Dzięki,
Godric fight, you can see that the summon for Gilbert and Vyke is there in front. We'll get to who Vyke is later. You summon both of them, and once you defeat Godric, that's all. The game files sadly don't give us more insight on the role Gilbert could have played later in the game. If he was kept in, we could have had some sort of morality system and one of the best quest lines. The start of the game would be a completely different experience.
Widzisz,
But what's
to
probably the most
odpowiada trochę na pytanie o tym honor systemie, nie? Czyli Miyazaki myślał potencjalnie nad tym, że nasze zachowania będą wpływały ewentualnie na to, czy jakiś NPC będzie nas huntował, czy nie, z zemstą.
important piece of cut content, a character that you know even if you don't think you do, is Vyke. But before I tell you about him,
Vyke.
let's uncover the last cut items. These are another case where there wasn't any reason for them to be removed. I'm honestly scratching my head as to why these were removed. The first item was actually so fully developed that it was used in the trailer. This cut item was called Miranda's Prayer. It got reworked into the aspects of the Crucible Bloom. But man, it sucks we lost another good tool. The last cut item is Lucent Baldachin's Blessing. I definitely mispronounced that. It's supposed to offer protection, so it probably operates just like Baldachin's Blessing.
to jest
It
to.
might even have been reworked to Baldachin's Blessing.
No, dawaj
But
Vyke'a.
one interesting thing with Lucent is that it's a consumable that can't be undone. So that raises a question. Was this supposed to be a key item that gives you a permanent buff to your character? And what kind of buff could this possibly give you if it was permanent? I have no idea. And we have no info of what the item actually does. So I can't really speak on what it would be like if it was added back. But maybe we'll see it added back later in a different capacity. Now for Vyke, the most important piece of cut content. Vyke is the person on the game cover. He held the most important role for the game's marketing. and in the base game, he's massively cut down. We can mostly only speculate. There has been some stuff found in the code, but not much.
No, Vyke
It's
jest
clear
gigaczadem
just from the way
przecież.
the marketing handled him. He was supposed to play a huge part in the game, and that reflects in what little info the player base has found of him.
No
This is
mówmy się, dziwne by było, gdyby Vyke znalazł się na okładce gry, a nie miał wielkiej roli. I tak w sumie jest. Więc na pewno mieli jakiś plan na niego, ale go wycięli. Ja pierdzielę. Z Vyke'iem po prostu się tam bijesz, chwilę się o nim gada i tyle.
concept art of what Vyke looks like. You can see his armor is melting. It looks so insanely cool, and some of you might actually recognize him. And that's because Vyke is in the game as a boss fight, Round Table Knight Vyke. But one look at the code makes it obvious that Vyke was supposed to be much more than he is. We have things like the fact he was able to be summoned for the Godric fight along Gilbert, and Gostock also mentions that Vyke follows into Stormvale close behind you. He was supposed to have a whole quest line in which you work your way cutting down demigod after demigod. If he wasn't removed, we might have had the biggest quest in the entire game.
Kurde, ja nie wiem, czy to nie jest tak, że Vyke był naszą właśnie konkurencją i ostatecznie źle podążył i mierzymy się z nim tam, gdzie może mierzylibyśmy się z nim tam, gdzie mierzymy się ostatecznie z Gideonem i byłoby to 300 razy fajniejsze.
Vyke could have been right by your side, seeking to also become Elden Lord. And in the end, when there's only one throne, two lowly tarnished, who once worked together, would have to fight to the death so either of them can become king. Because one thing that I failed to mention is that in the
Coś jak
current
DS1,
game's
no?
lore, it said that Vyke was closest to becoming Elden Lord and got devoured by frenzied flame right before reaching the crown. If he wasn't removed, the game would be almost unrecognizable, because Vyke is our equal. His existence would have made it so that we're not the only one capable of killing gods. But we'll never know what that game could have looked like. I guess the real Elden Ring is the friends we made along the way. We may not have any reason or hint.
Wkurzył mnie ten materiał, bo ilość kontentu wyciętego z Eldena sprawia, że myślisz sobie, że ta gra mogłaby być jeszcze bliżej ideału niż jest. Niestety Elden Ring ma wady. Jest moją ulubioną grą, jest dla mnie w sercu grą 10 na 10, ale obiektywnie grą 10 na 10 nie jest. I pod kątem lorowym czysto mógł być 300 razy ciekawszy, mimo że dalej jest oczywiście. Pod kątem wyborów mógł być 300 razy ciekawszy, pod kątem itemów być może też, pod kątem bossów być może też, bo cholera wie, czy właśnie te zapychacze nie są tym, co jest tak naprawdę pozostałością po fajnych pomysłach, których nie zdążyło się wprowadzić. Szkoda gadać, szkoda gadać. Mam nadzieję, że następna gra Miyazakiego, a mówił, że będzie, w sensie singleplayerowa, bo o Duskblocach nie mówimy, mówił, że będzie w mniejszej skali, więc może uda mu się zrobić dokładnie wszystko tak, jak chciał. I żadne Bandai Namco czy ktokolwiek nie będzie go popędzał z biczem nad głową, bo jak widać pomysłów jest znacznie więcej w tym From Software.